Okay, let's have the conversation nobody wants to have at church potluck. If King David were alive today, would he be on trial at the Hague for war crimes? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The Bible's golden boy has a body count that would make modern prosecutors very, very interested. And before you click away thinking, this is sacrilege, hold up. The Bible is the one telling us all this. I'm just the messenger with a highlighter and some uncomfortable questions. These are the types of content I create. If you're interested, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss upcoming videos. We're not talking about clean battlefield combat here. We're talking about systematic slaughter, civilian massacres, and actions that by today's standards would absolutely qualify as ethnic cleansing. So buckle up, grab your coffee, maybe say a prayer, because we're about to dive into the darkest corners of David's military career, the parts your Sunday school teacher conveniently skipped right over to get to the congregational songs. Holy war or just mass murder? All right, let's start with the numbers, because they're absolutely wild. 2 Samuel 8 says, when he defeated the Moabites, he made the prisoners lie down on the ground and put 2 out of every 3 of them to death. When he defeated the Syrians in the state of Zobah, David captured 1,700 of their cavalry and 20,000 of their foot soldiers. He kept enough horses for 100 chariots and crippled all the rest. This is just one campaign. David launched a decisive attack against the Syrian forces of Damascus, who had come to aid King Hadadezer. In a significant military engagement, David's forces triumphed, resulting in the death of 22,000 Syrian soldiers. 2 Samuel 10-17-18 mentions that David led the Israelite troops across the Jordan to confront the Syrians at Helam. For sure, your whole body will tremble, your brain will explode, and you will definitely be blown away if you learn that in the ensuing battle, the Israelites triumphed, killing 700 Syrian chariot drivers and 40,000 cavalry, securing a decisive victory. That's not counting all the other battles, skirmishes, and conquests throughout his reign. We're talking about tens of thousands of people dead. And that's just what the Bible bothers to record. The actual number was probably way higher. Now, were these all soldiers? The Bible doesn't always make that distinction. In ancient warfare, when you conquered a city, you often didn't differentiate between soldiers and civilians. Here's what the Bible actually says. David didn't just defeat his enemies, he erased them. 1 Samuel 27, 8-11 describes David's raids, where he systematically killed every single person, left no survivors. Not even one person to tell the tale. The text is brutally explicit. He left neither man nor woman alive. That's not a battle. That's extermination. That's a level of thoroughness that would make a crime scene investigator go, wow, this guy really committed to the bit. And 2 Samuel 12:31, after conquering the Ammonite city of Rabbah, David put the population to work with saws, iron picks, and axes, or forced them into brick making. Some scholars interpret this as forced labor. Others read it as execution by torture. Either way, it's horrifying. Like David saw a city and thought, you know what this needs? A really dark episode of Extreme Makeover. Now, ancient Israel called this herem, the complete destruction commanded by God for certain enemies. Herem was like a divine restraining order with teeth. God said, eliminate the threat completely, and Israel was the enforcement. It's the ancient world's version of leave no trace. Except you're not camping, you're conquering, and God's the park ranger. Divine mandate, right? Except here's where it gets murky. Some of David's massacres seem to go beyond any divine command. Some appear suspiciously like personal ambition disguised as religious language. When you're slaughtering entire villages and claiming God told me to, it's like David had a direct hotline to heaven, and every call ended with, "Now go annihilate them." Just your word and a pile of bodies. Think of it as spiritual pest control on steroids. Eliminate the threat before it contaminates the chosen people. David as heaven's enforcer. God pointed at the threat, David eliminated it, rinse and repeat. That starts to look less like obedience and more like a convenient excuse for conquest. So we're not just talking about clean battlefield combat, we're talking about sieges, civilian casualties, forced labor, and mass destruction. By modern standards, that's textbook war crimes territory. It's the ancient equivalent of "my girlfriend goes to another school, you wouldn't know her," except it's "God told me to do this, you just had to be there." Reaction to the hamstringing. But wait, it gets weirder and honestly more disturbing when we talk about what David did to enemy horses. 2 Samuel 8:4 says David hamstrung all but 100 of the chariot horses. Now, if you don't know what hamstringing means, let me paint you a picture. It's when you slice through the tendons in the back of an animal's legs, permanently crippling them. These horses couldn't run anymore, couldn't pull chariots, couldn't even walk properly. They were left disabled, suffering, probably in agony. And David ordered this for thousands of horses. He kept just enough for 100 chariots and destroyed the rest. Now, from a military strategy standpoint, brilliant. You just neutralized your enemy's entire cavalry without having to kill and dispose of thousands of horses. They can't rebuild their chariot forces if the horses are crippled. But from an ethical standpoint, from an animal welfare standpoint, it's horrifying. These animals suffered because of human warfare, and yes, I know this was normal practice in ancient warfare. But normal doesn't mean not cruel. If David did that today, PETA would be outside his palace with pitchforks. PETA stands for People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals and is an international non-profit organization focused on animal rights. Reaction to Uriah's murder. We have to talk about Uriah because this isn't just about warfare against enemy nations. This is about David using warfare to commit murder. 2 Samuel 11 tells the story. David sleeps with Bathsheba, she gets pregnant, and David panics. He calls Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, and one of David's most loyal soldiers, back from the battlefield, hoping Uriah will sleep with his wife and think the baby is his. But Uriah is too honorable. He refuses to go home while his fellow soldiers are still fighting. Uriah said no thanks to his own wife while his brothers were bleeding on battlefields. That's loyalty levels we can't even comprehend. He had brothers before lovers tattooed on his soul. He literally chose military solidarity over his marriage bed. So David gets desperate. He sends Uriah back to the front lines with a letter. A letter Uriah himself carries, instructing the commander to put Uriah in the most dangerous position and then withdraw, leaving him to die. And that's exactly what happens. Uriah is killed. David gets Bathsheba. Problem solved. Except this isn't warfare. This is premeditated murder disguised as a casualty of war. David weaponized the battlefield to eliminate someone who stood in the way of covering up his sin. If that happened today, David would be facing charges not just for murder, but for abuse of military authority and conspiracy to commit war crimes. You may be missing out on good stories you didn't know you needed. You need good content, but you're not sure where to find it. Your time is gold. Do you want to waste it? If you don't listen to us, you won't have anything to impress your friends with at your next gathering. The voices we never hear. Here's what haunts me. We only have one side of this story. The Bible is written by the victors, and victors don't tend to include the screams of the people they're slaughtering. Where are the mothers in these stories? Where are the children begging for their lives? Where are the civilians who had nothing to do with the war but got caught in David's path anyway? They're gone, erased, not just from life but from history. Their stories died with them, and all we have left is David's version. I won, God was with me, the end. It's like if every history book was written by the final boss of a video game. Yeah, I defeated all the players. They were clearly the bad guys. Moving on. But imagine if the Philistines had written the history books. Imagine if the Ammonites had gotten to tell their side. David wouldn't be the heroic underdog king. He'd be the genocidal warlord who wiped out entire communities and called it God's will. Their Yelp reviews of David would be 0 stars across the board. King David, 0 stars. Wouldn't recommend. Also, we're all dead now, so there's that. History is written by whoever's left standing, and David made very sure he was the only one left to write it. There are those who believe in every whisper, and there are those who don't seem to bother much. The question is, what can we gain from this? Divine command or convenient excuse? Now here's the million-dollar question. Was David actually following God's commands, or was he using God's name to justify his own violence? Because here's what we know for sure. Some of David's violence was clearly against God's will. The murder of Uriah? That wasn't a divine command. That was David abusing his power to cover up an affair. He orchestrated an innocent man's death to steal his wife. And the prophet Nathan showed up to explicitly call David out. Why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword. Nathan literally showed up like, we need to talk about your choices, David. Full intervention mode. So we know David was capable of killing for personal gain and trying to frame it as acceptable, which raises the uncomfortable possibility, if he'd do that with Uriah, what else did he justify that wasn't actually justified? Where's the line between God commanded this and I wanted this and convinced myself God agreed? Because from where I'm sitting, that line looks pretty blurry in David's story. It's like saying, I'm not saying God told me to buy this sports car, but he also did not tell me not to. Except with, genocide instead of a midlife crisis purchase. If you want to expand your thinking and deepen your understanding, come and let's delve together into meaningful studies and find the answer to the question, is it true? The teaser for part 2 of the video series invites viewers to explore King David's legacy in a fresh way. It questions if forgiveness can exist without accountability, comparing this to today's leaders. Get ready for a journey that examines both past and present issues, challenging traditional stories and sparking your interest. If part 1 was the appetizer, part 2 is the 5-alarm chili that'll burn your entire worldview. It's like watching someone crash a car, apologize beautifully, get forgiven, and then realizing the passengers are still dead.